Hi everyone, welcome to Dave's Bonsai. On today's episode, to dance or not to dance? Our mild winter continues. Right now it's about 32 degrees, but this morning woke up to the low 20s. It might have even hit 19 at one point. The PSGF never dipped below 35 degrees. And right now, well, according to this corner, it's 68, but that's the sun, and I don't know that sensor is never as accurate as the other ones. We have about 56 degrees on the other two. That's a little bit more realistic. So, to dance or not to dance? Ah yes, the Bonsai Shuffle. I know it well, and some of you might know it well as well. What I wanted to do today is just to talk about the pros and cons that I've learned about with the Bonsai Shuffle. So let's get started. Now most new people to bonsai will have maybe one or two trees. And if it's an outdoor tree and they have a relatively mild winter like we just had, they could have kept it outside here all winter long and there's no shuffle needed. For me, I have trees in my cold frames. I have trees in my new PSGF, the Passive Solar Greenhouse / green frame, my cabin cold frame, and of course I have a plant room with a bunch of tropicals. All the plants out here, there's really no shuffling needed. However, I did recently move most of these trees from my garden area up to the benches for now. And the reason why I did that is I have them all nice in a close proximity where I can let them get a little bit of early sun now for the year, and I can water them. So one of the things I wanted to mention before the Bonsai Shuffle conversation is the outside plants. When we have a really, really mild winter like we just did, these plants are outside and they're starting to de-thaw, right? They're not as frozen as they were middle of winter, even though it got down to 19 last night. It's gonna be a really dry pot. We're gonna need to water these trees. So don't forget to water your outside trees if it's been really warm for a stretch and things start to dry out. So dig into the soil and see what you got. See how far down you have really, really dry soil. This is super dry on top, but it's probably a little bit moist down below. Now, the temp right now I mentioned was 32 degrees. Look at the forecast starting on Monday. We're gonna have 3 days of 60s for highs, and the low one night will stay into the 40s. Oh, so the temptation to bring some trees outside. Now look at the next 5 days. We lose the 60s, of course, because that still is above normal, pretty heftily above normal. But look at the lows. We get back below freezing. So do you bring your trees out or don't you? I have my garage cold frame. I have my cabin cold frame. So these trees have been protected pretty close to that 40-degree range all winter long. Now one of the trees in here recently started to push out the buds, so I brought it to the Passive Solar Green frame so it can get more heat. We'll talk about the trees in there in a little bit. But first, let's head inside here and talk about what I should do with these trees. I have a lot of trees in here. Too many trees for me to fit in here and get a decent camera angle, so I'll just hold the camera. We got the boxwoods up top. We have some junipers in here. We have the Siberian forest down there. The barberry has some berries still left, some red, beautiful berries. And we have a potpourri of trees, including some larches and some dwarf Alberta spruces. And down here, there's some taxuses as well, and a couple of arborvitaes. A pine tree, and look at this guy. Now this guy is kind of up in the upper left dark corner, but if you look really, really closely, am I a little too close to those buds? The cotoneasters, they are one of the first to usually bud out, but we got to leave them in here for a little bit longer. All these trees are in good shape. Not a lot of really hefty push, but it's beginning. But because of the lows in the near future, we're going to leave these in here for a little bit longer. Even though it's going to be a glorious 60 degrees for the next couple of days, that'll probably want to open up some buds in here because it'll be hard for me to keep it cold. However, I don't want them all to wake up quite yet because I just don't have enough room in the passive solar green frame. Here's one of my client trees. And if you could just see in the center of the focus area, we have little green buds just trying to come on out. A lot of nice looking green moss down there too. It's a little darker because of the sunshine. I tried to underexpose things here a bit so I wouldn't bright you out. But everything does want to push. Now, I've had a few friends on YouTube comment that it's pretty fun to watch me go in and out of this thing during the Bonsai Shuffle. Yeah, as I get older, it's getting harder and harder, which is maybe reason number one not to do the Bonsai Shuffle. If you don't have easy access to your trees, in and out without worrying about tripping into a little pond right here or off into the rocks and damaging your trees, just let them in there for a couple more weeks, because you know what, there's going to be plenty of growing season, even though it is the upper Midwest, and we'd like more. If you just have a cold frame, let them stay in there for a little bit longer. Now, if you had one tree in here, by all means, take it out, put it outside for a couple of days and put it back in. However, with that in mind, remember that if you take a tree that's been inside that has leaves and you're going to bring it outside to direct sun, boom, on day one, and have it 60 degrees for 3-4 days, and then it's just glorious sunshine, you're going to run the risk of burning some of those leaves. So this is a very important tip for folks who are beginning in bonsai, especially if you worked on the tree later in the year last year. Anytime you bring a tree outside for spring, whether it was repotted last spring or summer or fall, when you bring that tree out in the new season, we keep it in the shade. I keep it in the shade for a good 2 weeks solid. And I'm talking about the shade. So outside with the indirect sun and not this, because there's no leaves on the tree yet. So this spot would get sun for hours. So keep your tree. Number two, tip number two is when you're taking them out, you're going to make sure that you're keeping them in the shade for a good 2 weeks and slowly introduce them to morning sun and maybe some late evening sun. And then you keep giving them more and more after that 2 weeks of being in mostly shade. So here's another thing to consider. That's the cabin cold frame with all kinds of storage right outside the door. And I'm coming up on the passive solar green frame to my left, your right. And of course there's trees there, and I can put some trees right outside the front if I need to. But then my benches are over here. So if I'm going to play the Bonsai Shuffle to get my trees over here to the benches from the garage, I mean, it's only 50 feet, maybe a little bit more, but trees in and out of the cold frame through the garage out to here, that's a lot of work. We're inside the garage now, and here's the paper birch clump that's on the slab. Now I can't take this out, one, because it's too heavy. I need Toby to help me. So it's not quite pushing out growth yet, so we're in good shape. But if I took this out, it could have a tough night next week with a couple of those lows. Yeah, why risk it? Plus, it's just too heavy, so I can't take it in and out, in and out, in and out. With my forests on my great big boot tray homemade pots, I've got Minnesota Forest number 2 right there. I've got the larch old growth forest right there. And again, these are not pushing out quite yet, which is good, but they're heavy. These guys are kind of heavy, and so to go in and out and in and out, that can be tough. Now, does anybody recognize that? Oh my gosh, I'm not going to get too close and too much time on that one. That's the landscape challenge, which needs a lot of help. More on that later. As we take a peek at a couple of the trees inside the garage cold frame, yeah, they're all in here hibernating pretty good. I don't know if you can see on some of these trees, but there is some light green on some of these trees right here. And up in here, look at this guy right here. It's kind of dark in there. Let's open it up. There we go. You can see that, huh? Look at that light green. So it wants to wake up. They want to wake up. But all of these trees in and out of this container, some of them being really big down there. It's kind of dark down there. There we go. You know, they're just too big. And so if it's not easy access and you have way too many trees, leave them alone until you know you can comfortably keep them where they need to be. Yeah, the trees are definitely waking up, but it's not quite time for most of us because we have some dangerous temps on the horizon. And if you have new buds like those lime green ones I just showed you, and you bring them out to the benches over here, and then the cold gets down to about 28, 30, 32 degrees, it's not going to be pretty for those trees. And you're going to have damage on those young buds, and they're just not going to be happy. So leave them into the passive solar green frame, perhaps. I have a PSGF. And so, in addition to cold frames, I have a place that I can wake up my trees a little bit earlier than most. And I don't have to do any bonsai shuffling per se because I can just keep it all here on the shelves. So Behind me, I have all kinds of trees that are starting to warm up and wake up, and I'll show you those in a moment. But a reminder, the PSGF, I get to open up as of March 1st because I'm going to have all the glorious sun, as I always have, but the temperatures are slowly increasing. So on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, with this next 5 days coming up, when we have 60 degrees outside, it could be up to 80 in here. And if it's 80 in here, this fan's going to come on, and we're going to circulate that warm air down below. So at night, when it's 35, down to 30 maybe, I can put in some of this warm air back in here, which could be that 45, even 50 degree weather at the early stages of the overnight. But we'll keep it above freezing for sure. And just in case it gets below 35 degrees, I do have that subsequent heater, my little ceramic heater, that'll kick on, and I won't get this thing below 40 from here on out. I want to keep it at 40 and above for all those chilly nights. And there's not that many of them left. And as we get closer and closer to April, oh my gosh, well then the sky's the limit. So I have some trees in here that are all waking up. They want to push out new growth, and they already are starting to push out that new growth. So let's show you some of those trees up close and personal, and then we're going to work on a tree in just a little bit. So over in this corner of the PSGF, I have two sets of trees that I want to show you because they're pushing out some growth. I have my slab forest from last year, and here's one of them right up here close to personal. And by my fingertips here, you can see some of these green buds that are starting to push out. So all of these Zelkovas are doing really, really well and ready to push growth. Now the other one that I was going to do a thread graft on is my maple tree. Yeah, this is the Trident. And I have some weird, wonky, long, leggy little growths here that I left on because I was going to do some thread grafting. Now it's too late. I can't push those through because look at those buds shining on through and wakening up and already 1/4 of an inch plus away from the branch that it's growing from. So I will wait until this gets tall and skinny again, and at first flush of growth hardens off, and when it does, we'll peel off all of the leaves and we'll put a couple thread grafts into this Trident maple. But look at that green growth right there in the tip. Yeah, so a couple trees wanting to wake up. Now you saw the cotoneaster in the cabin cold frame where it's pretty dark and colder. And look at this with the sunshine and a little bit warmer weather. The cotoneaster in here has leafed out pretty nice already. Beautiful small little leaves ready to become a new bigger tree again this season. Great to see the cotoneaster. Always one of the first to pop out buds. So what about those larch trees? Yeah, here's one of my original larch trees, my formal upright. And look at the green starting to pop out. Now, what's weird, very interesting about these larch trees is they look like they're just dead forever. And then all of a sudden they get a little bit shiny on the little bud as they swell. And it gets kind of a shiny look to it. And all of a sudden you see some light green and lo and behold, it starts to push through. And there you go, right in the center of your screen, lower right, you've got some buds that are already popping out. Isn't that fun? Waking up in the passive solar green frame. Ooh, and I see some more green down below. That is one of my barberries that I got from my father a few years back. Yeah, they were in his yard for probably 20, 30 years, and I chopped up a couple of them, and I still have two. The big one we saw earlier with the red berries, and this is my favorite little one right here. I might repot this one this year because of the bulgy old growth there. You see the old wood down there, those chunks. It almost looked like a heart when we put it in here with all the valves that didn't have any veins connected to them. Sun's popping out there. But you know what? Look at how much growth is on that already. So it's really not a great time to repot anymore because it's already exuding all that energy and wanting to grow. So there is the barberry. We'll probably just leave it alone, and I'll just take a tool to those and just gnaw them down to the surface of the soil so we just don't see that anymore. And we'll see how this little guy does this year. It's one of my favorite little trees. More on that later. So people are starting to recognize some of the trees that I have from Candice, and the windswept one, of course, is a very popular one. And look at the windswept, this Chinese elm with all the new little leaves on it. The sun came out here, so it's super bright. Look at all those little green leaves. So that one's doing pretty good. Ready to go. Now the tree back there is a tree I haven't shown anybody yet. This is a tree from Candice, and we got it from our friend Dave Severson up there in Duluth. I'm very excited to have a Dave Severson tree. And Dave reached out to me and said, "Hey Dave, do you have that larch that Candice had?" Here it is, Dave. And look, everybody, look at the green tips. So I've often said when you get a new tree from someone and you don't know when they repotted it last, you don't know what kind of soil they're using, you should repot it perhaps. So this spring I should repot it. And when should I repot it? Right now. Look at those new buds. It's not on every branch, but there's a lot of green tips there. That'll be a project in the coming days on a future video. And I've got a lot of my Zelkovas up on the top shelf there, and look at all the green leaves there. You can see some here and there. And over there in the corner, I took out one of my Portulacaria afras to kind of do some experimenting. How soon can I bring those out to the PSGF without any damage? So this won't get ever below 40 degrees at night. They will be fine. And then in the daytime, all the heat and light, and hopefully they're going to feel good. So we've got some volumen up top too. A lot of green starting to show in the PSGF. So in summary, with the Bonsai Shuffle, my bit of advice is to not do too much of it. Try to be patient. Try to let it go for a couple more weeks. But if you only have one or two, go ahead and take them out. Be careful not to put them in direct sun for a good couple of weeks. But that indirect sun, morning and late evening, you should be okay. Now, if trees don't have any leaves on them, you can put them right outside. I didn't mention that earlier. If there's no leaves at all, put it outside and let it get that warmth and that sun and let it start to kick into gear. But if there's leaves on it, you have to be careful with that, okay? So that was one thing. The other thing is make sure you have your cold frames and your position of your trees in an easy place to get in and out and in and out. My cold frame out there, the cabin is small and I have to crawl in there and hurt myself, trip and fall. Be very careful. That's when you can have accidents that hurt you, and you can have accidents that hurt your tree. And my garage cold frame is so far away and I have big heavy things in there without my son Toby helping with the slab. In and out and in and out, it's just going to be a lot of work. And I know we want our trees to wake up, and boy, over the years have I wanted my trees to wake up. And so therefore the Bonsai Shuffle. This year I'm letting them in there even with this nice warm spell coming up. I'm just not going to mess with them because I'm going to focus on the trees in here in the PSGF. So be careful with your trees. Take them in, take them out as you feel comfortable. Just make sure that you're not creating more work for you and possibly damage to your trees. Because if they do get cold and you forget to bring them in one night and you have some new fresh buds and it goes below freezing, you get some frost on there, you might lose some leaves and foliage and it'll have to grow in again, and it might not be as strong this year. We don't want to create even more work for our trees in our already short growing season. And here we have Candice's forest, Dawn Redwood. So this is a big forest, big old pot. She put this neat barker on the edges, but a lot of that in transit, and I found it this way with a few pieces off, and now in transit it's lost a few more pieces. So we'll have to pretty this thing up again and we'll see where it goes. We're just going to leave it in here so I can see and learn about the Dawn Redwood forest. Dawn Redwood's a species that's new to me, and it's starting to bud out. Looks very much like a larch at first with these real fine little green sections that are coming out. So looks a lot like that. This one was bumped and battered a little bit, and I don't know if this one's going to wake up. We could have damaged some of the roots too much in transit, so we might have an odd twosome over here. But let's just take a quick look at the Dawn Redwood. We're just going to get rid of some of those branches that we just don't think is necessary. I see this moving forward as a forest that looks pretty much the way it is. However, I think this would be more like what I vision in the Dawn Redwoods is those really big trees where the branches don't start until really high, so that old growth kind of forest. And so we can trim up a little bit of the bottom today, and we'll get rid of some of those branches that just are not making sense with this first go around. I'm going to take a couple of these lower branches off. I don't know if this one's going to come back or not. We got some death here. We'll see. I just don't want these quite as low. We got a low one back here, a couple of low new buds. Beautiful thick tree back here. We got these two thick ones back here and this one right there. I think this one's going to be a little bit too low for me too. So a little initial cleanup on the bottoms of these trees. So let's take a look at the trees on the right first, and we'll go from right to left today. So we got one kind of coming out at us in a funky way. Let's get rid of that one, and let's just shorten this guy up a little bit here. Shorten that guy up here. This one as well. This one's growing back towards us. Let's cut that one lower. We've got a split trunk here. We've got this nice one here, and we've got this one inside. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the big one off, because when we have some taper in this tree a little bit, so it'll show some age, and we'll get that thing grown up there. And there's a couple of buds right in the tip there that can take over, and we can see how that one heals up over time. So get this one a little bit shorter and this one shorter. All right. We have to be careful on the tall trees in any bonsai that we have thicker branches on top than the bottom, because the bottom are going to be the bigger and naturally in all trees. And so when we have thicker ones up top, we can certainly make those shorter. And then we can let some of those bottom ones grow out more. Now we have like 3 or 4 branches growing from this one right here. And then 3 new buds. So we'll see which one grows there. This one's an old one that died off. There we go. So that one's much shorter. I think I'm going to go ahead and cut this one off and cut this one shorter. Conical, short up top, short right here. We don't even know if that one's going to come back. So we won't put a lot of time into that one right here. Now this guy right here, we got a lot of buds in this section right here. We got branch coming down low here. That looks kind of odd. This is real thick right here. Let's cut this off and let it continue to go up. That could be a nice cathedral branch. You get that more cathedral looking branches on those old growth forests, and that would look really good there. We got a lot of branches to choose from in here. This shot out a whole bunch of 1, 2, 3, 4 branches here. There we go. We'll just keep a couple of those and decide later on which ones we're going to keep. Shorter. We can make this one a cathedral. Now this one is a twin to this one. Get some of this extra growth out here. We know it's going to shoot out. All kinds of new growth. We got 4 and 5 branches from the same area. We don't want that. This one's kind of growing down. So that cleans that one up real nice. My concern is we got kind of a couple of branches right here kind of facing at us. This one's going this way. This one's going more that way, and it's kind of down. I think we'll get rid of these guys here and see which of these buds take off. There's one in the back I'm going to get rid of. Shorter, shorter. There. Now that one's pretty thin too. So we got this nice branch here that we could cut this entire top off and then have some nice taper. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that this year. Let me just wait and see how that grows. But then there's some nice little interesting movement to that tree too, and it goes this way on the other side of the crick here, if you will. And we have a bar branch over here, so if I just get rid of this side and promote more to the left, let's just keep making these a little bit shorter up at the conical tip of this tree. Got one shooting kind of down here. Coming at us. A lot of buds on there. We'll watch this grow and we'll see. So now we're going to come over to this big tree right here. Got this big branch out front. This one kind of big coming down. Kind of got that middle one all thinned up there. Let's just keep going. Now this has a twin trunk up here. I'm going to go to the one on the left and keep that one. We'll just go shorter here. We'll go shorter back here. So there we've cleaned up this tree pretty nice. And again, a new species to me, so we're just going to let it grow. We'll see how this thing pops out, this first section of growth. This one's right at me. Let's get rid of that one. And this one, because we have new bud right next to it. Those old ones just kind of crispy and falling right off. Big tall old tree. This one's a really weird branch. Let's just get rid of that one. Let's get rid of this one. This is the oldest tree. It's losing some of its branching going up the tree. Again, really high before that first main branch. There we go. Now we can see the trunks better. We got some branching up here. And for right now, let's just leave it at that. We've got the Dawn Redwood Forest from Candice. We've got a couple of tall ones in that center back left side. And we'll hope this one in the front does come back, but it looks a little questionable. But we've got a forest of 6. We can add more trees at some point, or we can perhaps, yeah, we'll just let it go and see what happens. Let's go put it back in the PSGF. The Dawn Redwood is all back in its cozy little place in the PSGF. And I'm quite cozy again too. About 15 minutes out there in the wind, I was starting to get a little chill, but back in here, oh, I can't even see it, so bright. 64 degrees and sunshine in the PSGF. So the Bonsai Shuffle. Just be careful with your plants, everyone. Take good care of them and make sure you're not making it harder for yourself. We'll have a spring around the corner here that'll stick with us as far as those lows not going below freezing pretty soon, for at least us in the upper Midwest. And it's been an amazingly mild winter, so it's been fun to see this wake up. And the experiment, of course, continues. The fan just kicked on. It must be 65 degrees. And it's going to try to take some of that warm air and put it down below for some storage for tonight. That is going to wrap it up. Hey, thank you so much for watching. Take care of you. Take care of your bonsai. Be careful with the Bonsai Shuffle, y'all. We'll catch you on the next one.